Today, let's dive into a topic that goes beyond the familiar world of BMI, which is your body mass index, and explore the intricate landscape of women's health through the lens of your waist to height ratio and your waist to hip ratio. So now let's start with the waist to height ratio. So the waist to height ratio is considered a valuable health indicator because it directly addresses abdominal obesity, which is linked to various health risks. It provides a simple and practical guideline. The waist circumference should ideally be less than half of your height. So what's the evidence? Studies, including those published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, suggest that the waist to height ratio is a better predictor of cardiovascular risk factors and metabolic syndrome compared to the BMI or the waist to hip ratio. So how do you measure it? You measure your waist at its narrowest point, so it's typically above the navel, and you divide this measurement by your height. Again, a ratio of 0.5 or half or less is often considered healthy. So now let's discuss the waist to hip ratio, or the WHR. So this is used to assess, again, body fat distribution like the waist to height ratio. And it appears to have been the preferred measurement in studies and clinics before the waist to height ratio came onto the scene. So research indicates that an elevated WHR reflecting more fat around the abdominal area may be associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. But while the WHR can provide insights into health risks, it might not be as straightforward as the waist to height ratio. So its effectiveness might vary depending on individual factors. For example, if you are a woman that carries a lot of excess fat in your hips, but not in your waistline, your WHR might indicate a lower risk of disease than is actually accurate. And this is because a lot of excess body fat overall increases your risk of chronic disease. So a WHR below 0.8 is considered low risk, 0.81 to 0.85 is moderate risk, and above 0.85 is considered high risk. So how do you find that number? You measure your waist circumference at its narrowest point, and then you measure your hip circumference at its widest point. And then you divide your waist measurement by your hip measurement. All right, so finally, let's move on to BMI, or the body mass index. BMI is widely used to categorize individuals into different weight status categories, from underweight to obese, but it has its limitations because it doesn't differentiate between muscle and fat. So thus BMI has been criticized for not considering body composition. Athletes with higher muscle mass may fall into overweight or obese categories, despite having lower body fat percentages. So now let's consider a scenario where someone has a healthy waist to hip and waist to height ratio, but a high BMI. So without even looking at the person, you can presume that she has a significant amount of muscle mass. So while her BMI might suggest a higher weight relative to her height, the healthy WHR indicates a more favorable fat distribution, which indicates a lower risk for metabolic disease overall. So how do you measure your BMI? You divide your weight in kilograms by the square of your height in meters, but this is way too complicated, so there are plenty of calculators online that will do this math for you, including the waist to hip and the waist to height ratios. You just need a way to measure your waist, and you should know your height, and then you can also measure your hips. So why measure these ratios? Why am I even talking about these things? All right. They do more to indicate fat distribution. So this offers insights into health risks associated with body fat and body fat placement, and this aids in identifying potential health issues that might not be apparent through BMI alone. And so this insight becomes particularly relevant when considering risks associated with diabetes, heart-related issues, and more. And these can also be useful metrics to use when making healthy lifestyle changes. Not everyone wants to use the scale, as weight is variable and doesn't distinguish between fat, muscle, and water. So as someone that has fallen into the overweight category of BMI for the vast majority of my life, I like to know other health metrics for myself, and I like to share them with others that could benefit from them. So many of my clients find measuring inches useful, as this does indicate fat loss. And when you measure your waist, you can keep an eye on your waist to height ratio and your waist to hip ratio, and you can take heart in the fact that you are improving your health. Really, at the end of the day, it is all about empowerment. Understanding BMI, waist to height, and waist to hip ratios allows you to make informed decisions about your health. Not based on societal ideals, but on optimizing your well-being according to your unique body composition. So, what are your next steps? Grab a tape measure, measure your waist and hip circumference, and calculate your WHR, and then calculate your waist to height ratio. Write them down and then watch those ratios get more and more favorable as you continue on your journey towards better health. Let's not just focus on the number on the scale, but on the science that guides us towards a holistic understanding. Embrace the journey towards optimal health, one evidence-based metric at a time. If you found this video insightful, please give it a like and subscribe. And if you have any insights of your own to share, please feel free to comment below. And I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world.